The bigger context in which we're working, and I'm a business school professor, so I'll give you a very, very short reason why we're doing what we're doing. We think that business and the way business is taught and practiced is oftentimes not conducive to the human energy precepts. It actually can suck energy out, and sucks energy out of many people currently. And you see that in the employee engagement surveys, you see this in the surveys of like quiet quitting, great resignation, all of these things, and there is a reason behind that. And my choice after working in business has been that there are some ways that we can think better about how we organize. That's pretty much it. How do we organize? It does require a rethink about who we are as people, where we go, where we come from. And I call this, and I draw on E.O. Wilson and David Sloan Wilson and Hans Küng, who may not be so familiar to you, but he is a theologian who has worked on what is the consensus of all the religious traditions in the world. And so this consilience of knowledge between the hardcore science, the hard sciences, even quantum physics, you could say, and biology or evolutionary biology, and the ethics and the religious traditions is what we call a humanistic foundation for how we organize. We call it management. Other people prefer leadership. It doesn't really matter to us, but it's like a repositioning of how we think about ourselves and what we want in life and how we get there. And it turns out that for a long time, everybody knew, if you do the studies of how organizations work the best, they do that. They practice in an evolutionary sound way with the core design principles and other principles that we would, I think, find familiar with in the context of human energy. And so we redesigned a core course at Fordham before the pandemic to reflect these humanistic values. They align very much with the Jesuit values, and at the same time we started to work with the Jesuit leadership. There are 200 Jesuit universities across the globe. About 100 of them have business schools. And the intention was, coming down from Pope Francis, that the Jesuits should align their educational endeavors with Laudato Si. The encyclical, I think, was published in 2015. And align more broadly with Catholic social thought, the principles of honoring dignity and the promotion of the common good. So in that context, that seemed like a match, working and trying to work with these concepts of Teilhard, a Jesuit, and figuring out how we can bring this to apply to students that we get messages about every semester, it seems, Kimberley, right? Where it's like they're depressed, they're anxious, we need to pay attention to their physical and their social and their psychological well-being. So there is this fragility, at least perceived. And I think the terms that I use is that what human energy does and what we're trying to do is enlighten students, enliven them. Like the human energy piece is really, that's an enlivening project, and it's also an empowering project where they need to know that they can do something with it. It's not just like, oh, okay, great, now I'm at peace and I can sort of step outside or watch, but really get engaged. So I have this longer presentation here that's maybe giving you a little bit of a background in terms of what the Jesuit project in the background is doing, which is aligning education. And this is really specifically about business education because it's seen to be the most unaligned with Catholic social values, Catholic social teaching, Teilhardian thinking possibly as well, is around the notions of care for self, care for others, care for the planet or care for creation, and then these notions of knowing, doing, being, where I think much of the current work that is done helps us understand and know differently. I think education overall is struggling, at least professional education, with how we teach people to do things. What we're also sensing is that that being notion, the top one, is one where we're very, very poorly set up to intervene in meaningful ways. So I just wanted to share that with you. That's the background of why we at Fordham engage with human energy. I think that may also be a possibility of dissemination or connection, of course, more with I don't know, what strategy? Is it an R strategy? So more focused on business school professional education, where we have 100 business schools in the Jesuit network that are told to think about those things. We have 800 schools in the UN framework that we work with, and then there are the larger Catholic schools that have indicated interest, and I think at St. Mary's too, there was a conversation some years ago in the Lasallian network as well. So that's just the background. Oops. And yeah, I'm giving you a little bit of a context because we're working with professors in a very similar way. We founded this Humanistic Leadership Academy, where the goal is by 2025, we've transformed business education by transforming or educating, working with 5,000 business school professors globally that then have a reach of a 1 million student audience by that time. This is probably not enough to transform business education globally, but with the partners that we have, which you may not see here right now, we think that's feasible. Here's the United Nations framework. Maybe some of you know Ashoka. And Net Impact is a student-based organization in 500 universities that somehow demand some of this education. We still need to figure out exactly how to deliver it. And so Kimberley, LeMarque, and I, we have been testing it out with our students. Each semester we have about 600, no, each year we have about 600 to 800 students. And what Ellen, I think, and Sheila also described, these kind of pilot tests in different ways with videos and other interventions. And I think, so that you know, there is a background where we're trying to prepare the students to understand the bigger concept. So David's pro-social is part of their education. We have much of the background of who we are developed in that and how they need to rethink our concept here, the dominant concept of Homo economicus, to be more aligned with Homo sapiens. And so we provide some of the soil. We understand that it's one class amongst 30 within a year, so it's very small interventions, but we are testing pre and post. And we've been testing pre and post, and we can't really point to the intervention, but many of the students that are coming in, quote unquote, depressed, anxious, we have a DASS scale, that's a clinical scale for depression, anxiety, stress, and other things. After that semester, they're higher. They feel better. They're more empowered. We still need to figure out why that is. It could be the pro-social experience, because they work together, trust is built, and other things, but it could also be the more general message that, hey, yes, I can make sense of my world now. I can do something about the world now. I might not exactly know what my purpose is, but we give them constantly purpose exercises like the Ikigai that some of you might be familiar with and others, where they can figure out what does the world need, what are my skills and talents, and how do they overlap so that I can actually sustain myself going forward. So that's the context. Kimberley, do you want to come up maybe just for questions and answers? Because we do have a little video that worked quite well.
In 5 minutes or less, I'm going to prove to you that you matter. And I'm going to do it with science. Yes, scientific evidence that you matter. Isn't that comforting? And if you never wondered before if you matter, congratulations. Welcome to your first day on Earth. It's beautiful here. So, scientifically, there have been 3 stages to the evolution of our planet. First, the Earth was formed from rock and mineral matter, the geosphere. Then, an atmosphere formed around it that could support life, the biosphere. And finally, the realm of human thought that shapes our planet, the noosphere, a cultural and ideological atmosphere that connects us all. And all 3 are still developing every day. And as you know, every monumental shift is made up of many tiny ones. Atoms, the smallest material on Earth, make up everything you are and everything you touch. Ever tried to get into shape? Well, I haven't. But if you have, you know that each workout builds up your health, and each idea, every shared thought, and human interaction shapes the noosphere. From the Declaration of Independence to NFTs, ideas make ripples through our society. Think about your favorite line in a movie and what those words bring up for you. Think about a piece of advice, maybe from a parent or a friend, that you will never forget. Think of the moment, the idea that sparked the path you're on now. See, ideas create neural connections in our brains, and in the same way, the connective tissue of the noosphere. What mattered most to you today? The weather? Or your opinion of the weather? Your morning routine? Or your thoughts about if you were running behind or nailing it? A text message from someone you care about? Or the way you interpreted it? Our thoughts and reactions make a massive difference in our experience of life, which changes what we say, share, and express. Those expressions, those ideas, conversations, shared concepts contribute to the collective consciousness, a global consciousness, a noosphere. With the internet and phones especially, our words can reach farther than ever. Our thoughts are extended or amplified through these technologies: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We are all influencers in the global consciousness, massive forums of communication, including social media, create a cloud of thought that everyone with technology can access, process, and react to. We all contribute to this cloud of meaning, and we never know which idea is the tipping point. You are part of something so much larger. And so is the way you shape your thoughts, your conversations, your relationships, and your work. If we are all connected as part of a global consciousness, that means that you matter. Ideas and conversations are huge generators, from discussing transformational inventions to using those. What we put out into the conversational atmosphere makes a difference in not only how we see things, but what seems possible for others. At every moment, just as you are, you shape the world of thoughts around us. And that world of thoughts, in turn, shapes our actions, assumptions, and thus what we create in the world. And that means you, just by thoughtfully being and communicating, can shape the world around you. So, what do you see? Or should I say, what do you say? Or even really, what do you think?
But I mean, any feedback, please let us know. We're trying to be very intentional, learn from everything that's out there, maybe even take some of the material so that we're not reinventing the wheel or giving out the wrong message, align it with what the intention is, and then test it out. So maybe you want to just share what the students' reaction was.
Yeah, I want to say, in putting this together, there was a strategy. It was first in the choice of writer. We wanted to find someone that was academic, but also had a comedic approach. And that was very important because our audience was Gen Z, and we wanted to make sure that we could reach them. So that was part of the strategy. The other part was in the editing, because we didn't produce any video ourselves. So the editor was pulling stock footage as well as images and some that we would buy. But his idea of connecting to the target audience was fast clips, right? Going with that whole idea that there's an 8-second span in time for attention span. So when we put all that together with the music and everything, I presented it to approximately 400 students. And it wasn't really, it was a communication course, but it wasn't really connected to what we were doing at the time. We had already passed mediated communication, which is where it really belonged in the curriculum. But I wanted to get their feedback. So I presented it to them, and before we discussed what they saw, I asked them to fill out a questionnaire. What did they learn about the noosphere? Did they know anything about the noosphere? So there were some open-ended questions as well in terms of what did you learn? What questions do you have? So they completed the questionnaire, and then we had a discussion. We had a discussion about content, and we had a discussion about structure, because we wanted to make sure that both were landing. In terms of the content, they were very interested in the noosphere. They had never heard about the noosphere before, so Paul, you have lots of work to do. But they were very interested in it. They were very interested in the fact that they are empowered with their devices. They are empowered in their communication with others, where they can see themselves more as major influencers, where before they couldn't see that because they didn't really see the whole connection of global communication and the idea of the noosphere. They also were very concerned about the negativity of social interaction and social dilemma. And they felt that it didn't really address that we really needed to bring that to people's attention so that we could try to solve that. But that really wasn't our focus at the time, but it was something that we learned was on their minds. So now we're in the process of putting together 10 videos, 5 that focus on management issues, and then 5 that focus on communication issues. And there'll be 5-minute videos that will be incorporated into the curriculum and enhance what we are already doing, but introducing them to the noosphere and to global communication, connection, dignity, and the principles, Jesuit principles that we're really trying to communicate. So.
And this sort of emanated from dealing with students' anxiety?
No, that was just the context that I wanted to give you, because I think that's where human energy can really make a difference. If you can hear me in the background. At least that's I think, our shared experience, that the students are really lost. I see it with my kids. I showed it to my kids. My oldest is 14. At the time, he was maybe 13, 9, and 12. And yeah, they get something from it. And what it raises is questions, well, but I don't matter. Like, that's what they said to me. And I can only, I mean, I guess I also didn't think like that when I was 13. But I get the anxiety that they experience and that the students at the higher level also experience. And so just having them open up for a conversation about it, I think, can make a difference. But I'd like to know what you think and what works, because we're just, I mean, cashiering.
The voiceover is really good, super soft and appealing. What I personally think could be maybe added is maybe an evolutionary perspective on it, to say that we are the results of a long historical process, and that we are kind of a build-up of complexity, and that's also, at least in my worldview, it helps me to think that we matter a lot, because we're the result of such a long complexifying process.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's my feedback.
Yes, thank you.
If I can add something, I think it's very important that you zoom in on an individual and show on an individual scale, you know, like really like a network of interactions a person has, how this is beneficial, influential, and critical for the noosphere, yes? Because in terms of this kind of like being lost, if you are only showing a big picture, it might not really help in like being found, yes? Because like, oh, it's like if the scope is even larger. It's not the Facebook anymore, it's like universe, yes? So like you become smaller, yes? And then you zoom in and say like how it's made from like day by day, moment by moment, thought by thought, you know, like production.
Yeah, that's a great idea,
whole.
like focusing on
So
one
I
person
love
and
this.
watching that.
So,
Yeah, that's a great
Influence
idea, like
throughout.
focusing on one person and watching their
Yes.
influence throughout.
Well,
Yes.
what's interesting about that is that's actually some kind of a dynamic action. And, you know, I guess if I was thinking, well, what could the noosphere really be if we spread the word? If you could get people into some kind of action. Is that a naive?
Well, yeah, actually, let's continue in that.
I think Shima was waiting to make a comment.
Say that first of all, thank you very much. It's a great video. I think for me, first of all, Martin's comment, I had this kind of thought that it's rests at the global scale for a long period of time throughout the video. So as someone that was watching it, I was expecting it to go a little bit on a personal level. And I think at the end, I mean, it's my opinion, of course, I'm not maybe your target audience, but I think for me, there was a lack of urgency. So, okay, I matter, then what? What should I do now? How can I fit in myself into the pictures? I think that was something maybe just leaving the audience with some kind of a question, okay, I matter, but then how, in what sense? How can I be useful in this context of kind of making it positive?
Because we would love to know those answers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but leaving that question kind of as a seed in the mind, I think then they would go search for it.
And I think that's where the discussion comes in, right? This is a prompt for a discussion. And so we did have that discussion about how do you matter? Do you feel like you matter? Do you feel like you're making a difference? Do you realize that you are empowered to do something, to create something, to make a difference in the world? So, yeah. Yes.
So first of all, I love the video. And for what I feel its strong points were is that it did demonstrate the concept of the noosphere at a global scale. And it connected it to the individual in an optimistic sense. And I believe you said that a problem with it was that it didn't express the kind of the negative possibilities, and that has to be acknowledged at some point. But it was overall optimistic, and it did plant the seed, you might say, that as an individual, I might make a difference in something much larger than myself. And the actual phrase, you are part of something so much larger than yourself, which is an inspirational, spiritual sentiment, was, I think, stated. Now, as to what to do about that, how to translate that into action, I think a very important piece of this is that getting people to interact in groups at this point is the next step for action. And for me, it's a tremendously important concept to say that a small group is a miniature noosphere. A small group working well, especially, is a miniature noosphere. It's making decisions together, it's doing, and I know that something you haven't spoken about, Michael, at Fordham is that one of the things that you're doing there is you actually have a course in which the students are formed into groups, and those groups do challenging things, and these ideas get played out in terms of what they're actually doing. And of course, those groups need to interact with other groups, with the wider world, and so you're beginning to work. The individual is becoming part of a cell, the cell being a small group, and the cells are interacting with other cells, and so you're building up the noosphere bottom up, and you're living it at the same time that you're learning about it. So getting people to work in small groups is a key part of this. A key part of this, or the action part. So I think that's so important, and that we should be developing that that concept. And Michael, maybe just say a bit about what you're doing at Fordham in addition to what you've already talked about.
So I don't know what the timing is. Okay. So very quickly, if anybody wants to know more, I can be available for coffee. But we do have planned a couple of other videos, one on the individual. I think you were talking about being more on the individual level, then one on the relational and team aspect of it, like how do you then do that? And then how do you interact with organizations? We're all organizational people. And how do we matter in that context? And then it's society. So that's for management. That's how we set it up. And what you're saying, yeah, we are focused on getting people to be able to do something with it. For the videos, it's difficult. I think we want to show it. That's why any examples that you have would be great.
And I just want to say that what you're saying is absolutely right. We are living the noosphere, right, in our curriculum, the way that there's the individual that is forced to work within a team structure, and then they're forced to deliver a presentation to a larger a community. So actually bringing that to light earlier on for the students so that they can see the noosphere that they're actually walking through would be very beneficial. So, but thank you so much. Oh, there's a question. Oh, okay. There's a question.
What are you trying to encourage people to try to change? Because I feel like the message is kind of mixed.
In this video here, you mean, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's obviously saying you can change the world by your actions, but what change are you looking for? Are you looking for innovation in technology, or are you looking for intervention? Some people could look at that video and be encouraged to pursue political activism. Is it just the change that you want to make in the world?
I think it's really just the change you want to make, and to wake up to the fact that you have power to make a change. I think that's the video itself, when we put it together, the goal was an overview of the noosphere and trying to connect the global communication and your connection to it. That to plug in means that you are affecting other people. There's power in affecting other people. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're asking is for more specific direction to give people in terms of how they affect other people or their power. I think for us, we wanted to make sure that it was open for people to develop their own talents, but just to acknowledge that there was power. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The bigger picture, the goal is a flourishing noosphere, right? It's like a flourishing world, and the tagline that we use is a world that works for everyone. So it's not like any kind of change and random kind of whatever activism, but it is directed. And that's where I think the noosphere concept comes in. Okay, there is a direction towards an omega, and we declare that to be human flourishing or flourishing for life. Yeah.